let's talk about an idea that might feel a little, well, counterintuitive. What if our best efforts to design a perfect world, a true utopia, could actually pave the road to tyranny? That's the core question in Karl Popper's massive work, The Open Society and Its Enemies. It's a book that fundamentally challenges how we think about progress, freedom, and even the great figures of history.
Okay, so Popper kicks things off with a pretty provocative claim. He wants us to entertain a wild thought. What if some of the most brilliant, most revered thinkers in history, people like Plato, whom we put on a pedestal, what if they were the ones who actually designed the intellectual attack on freedom? It's a huge accusation, right? And it's the key to understanding everything else he's about to argue.
So here's how we're going to unpack this. We'll look at his challenge to these great men. Then we'll define what he means by a closed society versus an open society. We'll see the difference between trying to predict history and just solving problems. Then we'll dig into something he calls the strain of civilization, and finally, land on the choice he says is right in front of all of us. All right, first up, this challenge to great men. Let's see what Popper's really getting at here. So, where does this danger come from? Well, Popper says it starts with a concept he calls the closed society, an idea that is so powerful because it offers us the allure of certainty. So what on earth is a closed society? Well, imagine a beehive or an ant colony. Everything is perfectly structured, totally rigid. Your role is set from birth. You don't question it. It just is. In this world, the group, the collective, is everything. An individual bee or ant doesn't really have an identity on its own, right? It's all about the hive. Now, you might be thinking this all sounds very ancient, very primitive, but here's where Popper drops a bombshell. He argues that the most detailed, most influential blueprint for a closed society comes from one of the most celebrated books in all of Western philosophy, Plato's Republic. He's saying that Plato's vision for a perfect state is actually the ultimate model for an unfree, closed society. So let's look at the mechanics of Plato's perfect state. It's a rigid pyramid. At the very top, you've got the philosopher kings, the rulers. Below them, you have the warrior class, the auxiliaries, and holding it all up at the bottom are the workers. For Plato, justice wasn't about individual rights. It was simply about keeping this structure stable, no social mobility. In fact, change was seen as decay. And to get everyone to buy into it, the state would use propaganda, what he called a noble lie, or the myth of metals, to convince people they were born with gold, silver, or bronze in their souls, fixing their place for life. And if you want to know what the ultimate goal for a person in this system is, well, it doesn't get much clearer than this quote from Plato himself. He says the goal is to train a person's very soul so that they never to dream of acting independently and to become utterly incapable of it. It is literally the programming of a human being to erase individuality. Okay, so if that's the closed society, what's the alternative? This is where Popper introduces his big idea, the open society, which is all about embracing uncertainty. The open society is the total opposite of the hive. All the rigid customs and magical taboos are gone, and suddenly, you're on your own. You have to make personal decisions, you have to use your own critical thinking, your own reason, and you have to take responsibility for your choices. It's a monumental shift from collective certainty to individual freedom. So let's just put them side by side, because this is a fundamental clash. The closed society is collective, rigid, and based on magical thinking. It demands your submission. The open society is individualistic, it's dynamic, and it's based on critical, rational thought. It demands personal responsibility. Popper argues that the entire history of civilization, really starting with the ancient Greeks, is the story of this difficult, painful transition from the left column to the right. But what makes people want to build one type of society over the other? According to Popper, it all comes down to two completely different ways of thinking about change, either trying to predict the future of history or just trying to solve the problems in front of you. The closed society, Popper says, often grows out of an idea he calls historicism. Think of it this way. A historicist believes that history is like a train moving on a fixed track toward a predetermined destination, and they believe if they can just figure out the laws of history and predict where that train is headed, they can engineer the perfect society to meet that destiny. The goal isn't fixing today's issues, it's aligning with a grand cosmic future. And this leads to two totally different approaches. On the left, you have what Popper calls utopian engineering. This is the method of the historicist. It's like an architect wanting to bulldoze an entire city just to build their perfect vision from scratch. On the right, you have piecemeal engineering, which is Popper's preferred method. This is more like being a gardener. You don't destroy the whole garden to start over. You work with what's there. You pull the weeds, you fight the pests, you solve concrete problems one by one. Now, this brings us to a really crucial question. If the open society is all about freedom, reason, and making things better, why on earth is the closed society so tempting? Why does this idea keep coming back over and over again throughout history? I mean, really, why would anyone choose the cage? Popper argues it's not because people are evil or stupid. He says there's a very deep, very powerful psychological reason that we are so often tempted to trade away our freedom. He calls it the strain of civilization. Because here's the thing, freedom is hard. It's stressful. The constant burden of making your own choices, of being responsible for your own life, of facing uncertainty, it creates a kind of permanent anxiety. The closed society is an escape from that strain. It offers the comfort of the tribe, the security of being told what to think and who to be. But Popper gives us a chilling warning. He says that once we've eaten of the tree of knowledge, once we've tasted freedom and individuality, that tribal paradise is lost for good. You can't actually go back, and every attempt to force society back into that mold doesn't lead to harmony. He says it leads directly to history's greatest horrors, the Inquisition, the secret police, because the only way to force free people to give up that freedom is through violence and total control. And this all brings us to Popper's final critical point, the choice before us. He insists this isn't just a debate about history or philosophy, it's a fundamental choice about what it means to be human, and it's a choice we have to make. And he doesn't pull any punches about what's at stake. He frames the choice in these starkest terms imaginable. We can try to return to the beasts by giving up our reason, our individuality, our responsibility. But he says if we wish to remain human, then there is only one way forward, the path into the open society with all its challenges and all its uncertainty. So in the end, Popper leaves us with this huge question, a question that feels more relevant today than ever. As we look at all the problems in the world, which path do we take? Do we chase after the grand, sweeping vision of a perfect future, the utopian blueprint that might require tearing everything down? Or do we embrace the slower, humbler, maybe less glamorous work of just trying to fix the real, concrete problems that are right in front of us, one at a time?